Chris here with Nightshade Miniature Studios. This is going to be our first tutorial video. We'd like to do some more of these, so stay tuned. Hopefully we'll have some more out for different topics and things to cover. The first topic that we wanted to cover here was sort of an answer to a lot of the questions that we received by message and comment on a recent Reddit post regarding a 30K Night Lords Marine. So that Marine was painted with a sort of an uncommon blue to what you see out there for a lot of Night Lords looks. The way we achieved it was to base coat the model in black, matte black, Vallejo surface primer, and then we base coated that with Abaddon black just to make sure we covered all of that. I then hit the model with Vallejo black metallic, almost in a full coverage of that. Obviously the recesses and things were sort of left out to stay matte and really pick up the shadow there. And then we zenithal highlighted the whole Marine in a Vallejo Air Silver. Once that was complete, we then went in and hit the model with Alclad transparent blue lacquer. And it gave us this deep, rich metallic blue finish without actually using a metallic blue. Sort of let the light play off of that a little bit, kind of gave an interesting finish to it. Then we went in and with the rest of the Marines hit the metals, the guns, things like that. So what we're going to do in this video is go through that whole process. We're going to paint up one tactical Marine, and this process is going to get you it can get you above tabletop quality just straight up without doing anything else, as we're going to show you here. The way that we're going to paint this army, all the Marines, the basic tactical Marines and things like that are going to be painted like this. With the more display level pieces, we'll go in and actually do some edge highlighting with some of the transparent blue mixed with some different silvers and metallics there to really accentuate some of the highlights there. And that's really the only piece that we're going to add to this process. Again, it's pretty quick. It's going to get you a nice quality finish. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go through the whole process of base coat, silvers, guns, lightning bolts, probably even take up through the transfer. We're adding a Night Lord's insignia on the left shoulder pad on all these Marines. So, like I said, hopefully this is the first of many. So enjoy this. If you have any questions or comments, suggestions for improvements, suggestions for other videos, you can reach out to us at nightshadeministudio@outlook.com. As always, check out our website, nightshadeministudio.com, or like us on Facebook at facebook.com/nightshadeministudio. If you have any questions, requests for commission, suggestions for other videos, suggestions for improvements to this video, please shoot those over to me. And again, hopefully this will be the first of many. So let's get started. Alright, so here's our Marine, and he's based and assembled and all prepped and ready to go. So the first thing that we're going to do is add some thinner to our airbrush here, and we're going to go ahead and pour that in to get an idea of how much we're actually going to be using, and then add the paint. So here we have Vallejo's black surface primer, and I really like this primer. It goes on very smoothly, gives you a nice first coat to paint on. So we've got that mixed up and into the airbrush, and we're just going to go ahead and give him a good couple thin layers here. We don't want to go on too thick. We don't want to have any runs anywhere. Just want to get that on nice and even and thin. So we're going to spray on a few thin coats here and get adequate coverage. Give it a good look over too. Make sure you're getting underneath the model, getting into all the underside pieces there. It can be difficult sometimes to kind of see it, so really turn that model around. Now we're going to add a little bit of Abaddon black to this, and this is sort of optional. I honestly do it. I think Abaddon black's easier to I think it's a little bit of a richer black than the primer. So I usually add some just straight up to the primer, since I've already got the thinner in the cup. And then just go back over and give it another quick light spray. So we're going to dump that out and clean out our airbrush here. That's alcohol. For anyone that can't read that on the bottle, it's sort of faded as it's gotten wet. So we're just going to run some alcohol through it, make sure it's relatively clean. Add some more thinner here. And the next step to this is going to be the Vallejo Model Air Metallic Black. And with the metallics, I love Vallejo Air Metallics. I think that they're probably the best metallics in the game, honestly. The metal flake is very small, so it's intended to go through an airbrush. If anyone's tried to airbrush with any of the other offerings from other companies, you probably know some of the difficulties. So I honestly use them for brushwork too. They're smooth, they're very, very easy to get a good coverage. So with the black, we just sprayed sort of an all-over single coat on the model, really got in the underneath sections. Now what we're going to do is mix up some Vallejo Model Air Silver, and you could go one of two routes with this. You could either go silver or aluminum. Those two are in the high end of the white spectrum of their metallics. I honestly prefer silver, and actually you can see in the video just how white that actually looks. So we're going to spray over top the model and down about a third. What you would typically see if think about if you were standing in broad daylight outside, where that coverage is going to be. It's going to be on the top of the head, the shoulders, any of the raised areas. So we're literally just going to go over him with that. So as you can see, top down here, he looks very, very metallic. You're seeing the silver more than the blacks. That's pretty much going to be the highlighting. So now we're going to clean out the airbrush with lacquer thinner. That's also what we're going to use to mix up the outclad. And as you can see, it's very, very blue, very rich. I'm honestly in love with this stuff. I haven't found a better product. So here you can see it mixing up. It's going to come out a little bit lighter in the cup than it would otherwise. So one of the big considerations there is make sure that you're take time here. We took time out to seal the Mini. We're spraying lacquer over acrylics, lacquer thinner over acrylics, and just want to go ahead and cover him to make sure that we don't run into any issues with the lacquer thinner eating through the acrylics. So I'm going to spray all over, full coverage, top, bottom, underneath. We're not going to do anything fancy here. We're just going to go over with several thin coats of this lacquer. When you mix it up, you're probably going to want to, if you haven't used any lacquers through your airbrush, make sure it's good and clean and dry. You don't want to get water in there. Make sure that you're cleaning it very quickly. Dry lacquer is nearly impossible to get out. And when you're spraying it, you really, really want to get thin with this stuff. You can get ahead of you pretty quickly. So that's that. And so here we're comparing it to an edge highlighted Wraith Guard. As you can see, you get some more depth, a little bit more realism with the Zenithal highlighting, I think. So we're going to go in now and do the brushwork. So this is Vallejo Model Air Chainmail. And I like this. It's a kind of a mid-tone silver, brighter than Lead Belcher from Games Workshop, but still darker than Vallejo Silver. So we're just going to be very, very careful here to make sure that we don't mess up our paint job. It's hard enough to clean up after your airbrush anyway. And with what we're doing here, brushing on the lacquer typically doesn't give a very good finish. I've never been happy with it. So just be super careful. Use the side of your brush here to hit raised edges. Take your time with it. Now, with what we're going to do here, the silver is actually going to give you have a little bit of forgiveness with this. You'll see later on in the video here when we get toward the final stages of the model that we're actually going to be using this exact same silver to do some of the battle damage and wear and tear. So if you get a little sloppy and you bump an edge in particular with the side of the brush and you get a little bit of paint there, first of all, it's lacquer, so you can go crazy on it with a damp brush and try to scrub it away if you get to it quickly enough. To be honest, with it being lacquer, if you have a wooden toothpick, or you could cut down a plastic spoon or a fork, you could probably very lightly scrape that off without damaging the lacquer underneath. We let the lacquer dry for several hours actually. This is actually dried pretty much overnight, which is a good idea. Even though we're spraying it on thinly, you don't want to go back to it anytime soon. We did a single model here simply for the tutorial, but normally with the amount of cleanup that's required to get your brush cleaned again, we're bulk painting these things. So, it's a good idea to do if you're working with acrylics. It's a good idea to do, especially if you're working with lacquers. You can get whole squads knocked out in what seems like half the time by doing your batch painting. So make sure you're doing that for everything but characters, really. Squad stuff, anything you're doing, and go through and assembly line paint. Paint all the blue, paint all the silver, paint all the red. Like I said, it goes much faster, and it sort of keeps you motivated. It's easier if I sit down and I say, okay, I'm going to knock out all of the reds on these guys right now. And honestly, I find that I stay at the table longer because by the time I finish up the last model, the first model's dry and I can move on to the next color. So here we're going in and being very, very careful again, not to touch our blue here. I'm just hitting all the rivets on the backpack. We've done the chest harness, done the tubes on the feet, all the studs, done the shoulder pad rims. So now we're just going to go in and touch up these last few areas here. Tubes on the helmet, a few touch-ups here and there that I noticed as I was going through. And I don't think that's something that anybody ever outgrows, is missing something on the model, particularly some of the models that are available today. There are so many details. Privateer Press is notorious for it, in my mind. I will work on one of their models and come back a few hours, a day later, take a look at it and realize that there's just areas that I somehow overlooked. You get in the zone, sort of happens. So we have the silver in the exhaust of the backpack, and that just about does it. I'm going to come back here a couple times with stuff I forgot on him to hit. I think at some point I come back and get the underside of the pauldrons that I didn't get. But we're going to go ahead and move on to the bolt gun. Now this is going to be, the casing on this is going to be red, so this is what you would typically, how you would typically paint something. If you go a little bit out of the edges here, it's not a big deal. We'll cover that up with the red when we come back to it. Just hitting all those areas in that bolt gun that we want to have silver. Do the trophy mount. And again, just like the bolt gun, if we go a little bit out and hit the skull, it's not going to be a big deal. And, so I'm realizing that my camera placement might not be ideal here. See, my head's getting in the way of some. We will look to fix that in the next video. I didn't do that too much going forward. I'm going to actually use the airbrush here to do a glowing effect on the coils of the lightning claw, so the silver is only going to be on the claws itself, and at the, up toward the top of the claw. We've got more, this would be a connected piece. I'm not sure exactly what you would call that. But right there, that piece right there. So we're going to leave those coils in the middle just unpainted. Right now they're a dark blue, obviously, with the rest of the model. So the glow effect I'm going to do is going to be blue. I thought about using a green or a red glow, but it just wouldn't really mesh with the rest of the model. So checking it over, seeing the unique parts I missed. So we're going to come in here now with Abaddon Black, and we're going to do all the soft armors. The hip joint, the knee joint, the elbow joint. Now luckily, the majority of these are in recessed areas that probably didn't get picked up too much in the highlighting. So again, be super careful. But if it comes outside of that joint a little bit, it's not necessarily going to be the end of the world. So here we're doing it in the palm of the hand, palm of the power claw. There's actually quite a large soft armor portion there. And inside of the elbow joints. So now we're going to go in here and do the holster. We did that mechanicum gray. I had thought about doing a brown, almost as a throwback. With the Heresy era stuff, it's sort of a throwback to childhood when I first got into the game. So I thought about doing brown, but I just didn't like the look of that with the model. So we've done a lot of the holsters, pouches, and things with this army in grays. So it's really going to look black by the time that we're done. It'll be much darker than this, but since with this pouch especially, the folds are very minimal, I like to go over with gray first and then wash it. Now we're going to come in with corn red and start hitting those areas, and add a little bit of my hand there. Games Workshop paint pots. So we're going to do the case of the bolt gun here. This is where we're going to fix our mistakes with any of the silver that went outside on that casing, and you know, typical things apply here. Thin out your paint, smooth brush strokes, don't get too quick. Showing my hand right now. I actually went over this with two thin coats. Going over the black, it wasn't quite the red that I wanted. So I'm going in after that, highlighting the silver on the bolt gun. Going back in with the second, or going back into the eye lenses here. We're using corn red into the inner corner, and then we'll come back later with a brighter red to the outer corners. But while we have it, we'll go ahead and do this. on oil, and we're going to go ahead and wash the bolt gun. And I want to give that plenty of time to dry before we come back in and highlight that. Now this is mixed with just a tiny bit of water that's already on the brush. I'm going to go through something a little bit later with the non-oil as far as what we're mixing it with, but right now this is pretty much just straight non-oil, and that's going to go on the pouch too, or the holster I should say. So while that's drying, we can work around that. So now we're going to go back to the skull. This is Sandry dust, and again this is just the base coat. So good coverage, a few thin coats, especially with the tans. I have an Angels of Absolution army that I run that is entirely bone white. And if you are struggling to paint thin, smooth coats of paint on models, tans and ivories and bone whites are sort of your trial by fire. If you can master it with that, you can paint any color smooth. I don't know what it is about the pigments. I don't know, and it doesn't seem to be just Games Workshop or just Privateer Press. It's across the board. So, just a tip: if you want to get good with, or want to get better at painting smooth coats, just paint a few models in tan armor. So this is Fenrisian Gray. So we're going to go and do the lightning here. Now I actually thin this out with a little bit of Flow Aid from Liquitex, and you can pick that up at any craft store. I think it's better for the pigment. The pigment doesn't separate as much as it does if you thin it with water. I typically thin it with water for almost anything else, but when we start to go in and do details or things that I really want to hold a sharp, crisp line, those get Liquitex. So we're going to go in and do the lightning bolts. Now the trick to these is just to have a super light hand. As you can see, we're barely making contact with the model. You also find that the harsh stops are what a lot of people don't find aesthetically pleasing. So when you get down toward the end of the lightning bolt, a lot of times I'll pull away from the continuous bolt that I was doing, and I'll actually start to just pull the lightest, thinnest line I can, and that's going to be the tail end of my bolt. So that's one way to do it. Now I kind of stopped here. In the middle of doing the lightning, I realized I wanted to do a freehand on the right shoulder pad. All the Marines so far that we've done, their freehands are intermixed on the right shoulder pad. It's almost always covered in lightning, but we do have a freehand on there occasionally, just to mix it up a little bit. And with this guy being a sergeant, he's actually going to be a sergeant in a terror squad. I know I said tactical squad in the intro, but it's actually a terror squad sergeant. So he's going to get a coffin, a black coffin with a corn red outline with a white lightning bolt. Now the light doesn't pick this up very well. It's pretty, it's black on dark blue, so the odds are sort of stacked against us anyway. And with the equipment that I'm using, like I said, bear with me. We're definitely going to try to improve these as we try to get more out. So I went in, I just drew the outline of the coffin with Abaddon black, very thin, very light. Then filled that out, and then came in and outlined that with very thin corn red. And actually had to go over that a couple times. If you're going to go outside of the first line you painted, air toward the inside, since we're going to be covering that up with black anyway. If you go toward the outside, you end up expanding the size of the coffin to try to fix that. So here we're taking some dead white and blocking out the lightning bolt, and probably a good idea to use a very small brush for this, and get the paint very, very thin, as always for any sort of freehand like this. We're basing the pattern off of some of the stencils that come on the Night Lord's etched brass by Forge World. So there is a coffin on there that's part of some unit insignia, and as opposed to adding that etched brass, we just went ahead and painted that on there. So now we're going to go in, and where we've already blocked out the lightning bolts with the Fenrisian gray, we're going to take Vallejo Dead White, and we're going to paint in the lightning bolts here very, very thinly wherever there's a crack, a lightning crack. So if you have a lightning bolt that separates off into a second arm, right here is where we are going to accentuate that. And the idea is simply, and there's a good shot of it there, as you can see, just adding in a little bit of white touch here and there to wherever we have the lightning crack. And like I said before, I've seen some of these go sort of awry. So this keeps it very minimal, gives you kind of an idea of the energy, the electricity, without doing a glow. We're taking some Evil Sun Scarlet here, edge highlighting the bolt gun casing, any of the red there, just trying to separate that out a bit. Obviously you could go a step further there and do some more blended shading and highlighting, but with a standard troop choice like this, you know, the infantry that you're going to have tons of, I find it just as easy to edge highlight over the wash. And then we're going to go and we're going to paint the outside corners of the eye lens with that Evil Sun Scarlet as well. Thin down again. That'll give us a transition from the corn red up to an Evil Sun Scarlet across the eye lens, from darker to lighter, inner to outer. So here we're going to use Seraphim Sepia to shade the skull on the trophy rack, and it's just a heavy wash, a little bit thinned down with water, but not too much. And then a little more Vallejo chainmail to highlight the bolt gun, the metallic parts, the magazine, the barrel, the rail, those kind of areas. Now we're going to go in here, we're going to take some Vallejo chainmail, Model Air chainmail, as I said before, to go in and weather the armor. We're not really doing anything with it. It almost turns into just a really rough edge highlight. You can sort of see what I'm doing here. Going around those armor platings that would face the most wear and tear. We're going on the toe cap, we're going around the edges for the torso, the neck guard, really going to heavily nick the power fist up, or the lightning claw, excuse me. I think that just makes sense. You're punching through things. The same applies obviously to a power fist. With the type of armor that we're painting here, and the way that we're painting it, I tried it on a few models before this, and I couldn't really come to a good solution. Typically when you're painting wear and tear, you would use a darker tone than your armor to offset the metallic and the nicks and scrapes. With this, I find you don't need that. The metallic alone will get that idea across. The depth is created by creating what appears to be missing paint. So, many ways to weather it, but I find this to be the quickest and easiest, specifically for infantry models and things that aren't really going to be a centerpiece. So we're going to go to the backpack here. Like I said, the torso, some of the knee guard areas, the bottoms of the greaves, the toe caps, the helmet. So once that's done, and you're satisfied with that, this is 75-25 solution. It's 75% water and 25% future floor polish. I don't have the bottle in front of me. They've since changed the name. I will try to find that and post that in the comments. But a bottle will last you until the day you die, with the amount that you're going to use. So what that's going to do is it's going to make more of a glaze than a wash. We're going to combine that with some Dawn oil until we get it broken down a bit. We're going to drop that in the eye lens, and anywhere where you would want separation between the metallic and the blue that you weren't getting. I used it on the helmet hoses and the backpack hoses. And that's going to dry and just basically do all of our shading and everything for us. Then we're going to take some Administratum Gray and go in and just edge highlight that holster to tie that up. Now we're going to take Screaming Skull and go in and pick out the high edges of the skull on the trophy rack. And I'm not being too meticulous with it as far as what I'm actually covering with it, other than making sure that I stay out of the recesses. If I overlap a little bit here and there, or go a little too heavy, it's bone, it's old bone, it's not an even surface, it's not an even coloration. I did one thin coat of that, that got me pretty much the look that I wanted. Again, I was going for kind of an older bone look, so not a whole lot really to do with it. I then went in with Pallid Witch Flesh and further edge highlighted it. That one I was more careful with, to sort of just keep it at just the raised areas. Now, I wanted a little bit of a different tone to it than what you typically get out of Seraphim Sepia or Agrax. So I used P3's Flesh Wash, which actually has sort of a reddish, peachy, pinkish tint to it. So I used that in place of the other two washes that I mentioned by Citadel, and washed the skull to finish that off. And in the final pictures you can really see it's got a little bit of a red tint to it in the recesses to give it sort of a, I don't know, a different look to it. And then we're dotting the eye lenses, the far outside corners, typical of any Games Workshop instructional marine paint scheme. So that's pretty much going to be it for our brush work. We're going to come back to the airbrush here. Like I said before, I wanted to do a glow on the coils of the lightning claw. You could paint them any way you wanted. You could not paint them however you want. You know, it's up to you entirely. So what we're going to do here is we're going to lay down a base coat. And I shouldn't really say a base coat. The base of the glow, because the base coat that we're using is the dark blue that was already on the coils. The base of the glow is going to be P3 Troll Blood base. So we're just going to mix up a tiny bit of this. Thin down, shooting very, very low PSI. I think I was maybe shooting at maybe 10 when I did this, because I want to get very, very close to the model. So a lot of trigger control on this. I'm using a Badger Chrome Renegade, and I don't really find the problem as much as I do with some of the other brushes that I use, but it's still a good idea. One of the tricks that I learned the hard way when I first started out with an airbrush, if you're not familiar with it, start the airflow pointing away from your model, because if you have any sort of tip dry or paint splatter, simply starting the airflow is going to throw little flecks of paint, and it's going to be bad news for your paint job. So once we're satisfied with that, we're overlapping those coils a little bit onto the surrounding armor. Not too much, because I didn't really want to detract from the armor itself. I just wanted to give the idea of a glow. Once we're satisfied with that, though, we're going to come in with P3 Arcane Blue. And no mix here. Just straight up Arcane Blue, and we're obviously going inside of the Troll Blood base paint with that. So again, very low PSI, very thin. Taking real care not to have any sort of overspray. If you wanted to and you felt more comfortable, you could obviously do this without the arm attached, or you could mask off the rest of the model. Honestly, a plastic baggie or a latex glove with a hole cut in it and his arm sticking out works incredibly well. And then the last piece of this is Menolth highlight. I don't like pure white out of an airbrush at all. I think that the Menolth highlight gives us the same idea that we're looking for without any of the hassle. I don't like white paint through an airbrush. I think that the particles are too big. I just have a lot of problems with it. I've never liked it. So if I go toward more of an ivory kind of color like Menolth highlight, I don't run into those problems. So with that done, we're going to move on to the transfer. So here's a two-part solution that I find incredibly helpful. We have some water in with the transfer there to separate it from the backing. And these are two solutions that you can pick up. A lot of times they're sold in a set. They're micro sol and micro set. So first of all, we're going to brush on micro set onto the shoulder pad, like you would with water or any other sort of, if you were using Lamian medium from Citadel or something like that. It's actually, I think it's a vinegar base, and it actually sets, it sort of softens the decal a little bit. So we're going to paint that onto the shoulder pad first, and then apply the transfer to the shoulder pad. Now we're going to take a dampened paper towel and just sort of blot the area to remove any of the excess micro set. Obviously after we set the decal, we had brushed a little bit more on there just to make sure we had good coverage, but just blotting off the excess, it dries pretty quickly. Now the second part of the solution is micro sol. I'm pretty sure this one's alcohol base. This one actually really breaks down the decals and helps them conform to really odd angles. If you've ever put on some of the round decals or a Dark Angel's sword and wing logo or icon onto a shoulder pad, you'll know how hard it can be to actually get that to form to what is a relatively flat surface compared to some. This is going to help with that. So that'll pretty much wrap it up. You can see here the photos of the finished product. If you have any questions, shoot those over to nightshadeministudio@outlook.com. And thanks for watching.